Chapter 8, The Price of Empire. Admiral Corvin had built his reputation on the ability to make difficult decisions quickly, but as he watched the tactical displays aboard the Dominion's Edge, he found himself facing choices that challenged even his considerable experience. The distress signal from Nexus Station had reached his flagship 47 minutes ago, transmitted through the quantum communication array before the gate network had been compromised. Since then, all attempts to establish contact with the station had failed, clear evidence that the Syndicate had succeeded in gaining control of at least part of the facility. "Sir, our long-range sensors are detecting debris fields consistent with combat operations," reported his tactical officer. "But we're also reading active power signatures from both Imperial and unknown vessels." Corvin studied the data, noting the telltale energy patterns that indicated ongoing fighting. Captain Rodriguez and Commander Voss were still alive and resisting, but they were clearly outnumbered and cut off from reinforcement. "Options?" he asked his staff. "We could attempt a direct assault," suggested Captain Morris, his chief of staff. "The 3rd and 5th battle groups could reach the system within 6 hours if we used maximum acceleration. And risk having our ships redirected to hostile coordinates when we try to use the gates," Corvin replied. "The Syndicate has had time to implement whatever modifications they planned. We have to assume the gate network is completely compromised." The strategic situation was unlike anything the Imperial Navy had faced before. For the first time in the Empire's expansion, a rebel force had managed to turn Imperial technology against itself on a massive scale. "Sir, there is another option," said Commander Park, the fleet's intelligence officer. "We could use the backup gate network." Corvin raised an eyebrow. The backup network was a classified system designed for emergency use only, a parallel gate structure that operated on different quantum frequencies. It was much slower than the primary network and could only handle single-ship transits, but it was completely separate from the systems the Syndicate had compromised. "How long to reach Nexus Station using backup gates?" 12 hours for the first ships, 18 for a full battle group, Park replied. "But sir, once we reveal the existence of the backup network, we lose a significant strategic advantage." It was a classic military dilemma: use a secret weapon to resolve an immediate crisis, or preserve it for a potentially more significant future threat. Corvin had faced similar decisions before, but never with stakes quite this high. "Sir," interrupted his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission on emergency frequencies." "It's from Commander Voss." The main screen flickered to life, showing Zara's face against a background of emergency lighting and visible battle damage. Her uniform was torn and smoke-stained, but her expression remained composed. "Admiral Corvin, this is Commander Voss aboard Nexus Station. The facility has been partially compromised by Syndicate forces, but we maintain control of critical systems. The gate network has been sabotaged and is under enemy control. What's your tactical situation, Commander?" "Captain Rodriguez and her battle group are engaged with enemy vessels in close-quarters combat. Station security is dealing with internal saboteurs. We estimate the Syndicate has approximately 40 personnel aboard the station, supported by a fleet of 15 vessels." Corvin could see the exhaustion in Zara's eyes, but also the determination that had made her one of his most trusted officers. "Can you regain control of the gate network?" "Negative, sir. The modifications are too extensive and well protected. Even if we eliminated all enemy forces, it would take weeks to restore normal operations." "Understood. Can you hold your position for 18 hours? Zara paused, clearly calculating the odds. "We'll try, sir. But Admiral, there's something else you need to know. The Syndicate isn't just trying to capture this facility. They're implementing a strategy that could compromise gate networks throughout the Empire." The implications of that statement sent a chill through the bridge. If the Syndicate could replicate their success at Nexus Station across multiple sectors, the Empire's ability to maintain control over its vast territories would be critically undermined. "Explain," Corvin ordered. Dr. Sarachin, the physicist who implemented the modifications here, indicated that this operation is part of a larger plan. If they can demonstrate that Imperial gate networks can be captured and turned against us, it might inspire similar operations throughout the outer territories. Corvin closed his eyes for a moment, seeing the strategic picture with perfect clarity. The Syndicate wasn't just fighting for control of a single sector, they were attempting to undermine the technological foundation of Imperial power itself. Commander, I'm implementing Emergency Protocol 7. Backup gates will be activated within the hour, and relief forces will begin arriving in 12 hours. Hold your position at all costs. Understood, sir. Voss out. As the transmission ended, Corvin turned to his staff. Gentlemen, we're about to reveal one of our most closely guarded secrets. But if we lose Nexus Station and the Syndicate succeeds in replicating their tactics elsewhere, we may lose everything. Chapter 9, Final Gambit. Dr. Sarachan watched through the laboratory's viewports as the battle for Nexus Station reached its climax. The Syndicate boarding parties had managed to establish footholds in several sections of the massive facility, but Imperial security forces were mounting fierce resistance throughout the installation. Your people are dying for nothing, Commander Voss said, her voice hoarse from coordinating the defense. Even if you capture this station, the Empire will never allow you to hold it. Sarah turned from the viewport, noting the exhaustion in the Imperial officer's face. Voss had been fighting for nearly 6 hours, coordinating both the defense against external attack and the response to internal sabotage. Every revolution requires sacrifice, Sarah replied. The question is whether the sacrifice achieves something meaningful. And what exactly do you hope to achieve? Even if you control this sector's gates, you're still facing the combined might of 14 galaxies. The numbers alone. The numbers change when people realize the Empire isn't invincible, Sarah interrupted. For 2 centuries, Imperial expansion has succeeded because people believed resistance was futile. But if we can demonstrate that Imperial technology can be turned against itself. She gestured toward the modified gate control systems, where red status indicators showed that Dark Star remained fully operational. Despite hours of combat, the Syndicate's modifications continued to function perfectly. You're talking about inspiring a galaxy-wide rebellion, Voss said quietly. I'm talking about giving people hope. The hope that maybe their children won't grow up under Imperial occupation. Lieutenant Torres approached with a status report. Ma'am, Captain Rodriguez reports that enemy vessels are attempting to dock with the station's primary cargo base. Security teams are moving to intercept, but we're spread pretty thin. Zara studied the tactical display showing the ongoing battle. The Phoenix and her escorts had managed to disable 3 enemy vessels, but the remaining Syndicate ships had succeeded in reaching the station. The fight was now transitioning from space combat to boarding actions, exactly the kind of chaotic environment that favored the attackers. Torres, I need you to take a team to Section 12 and secure the secondary quantum matrix. If the Syndicate gains access to that system, they'll be able to expand their control over the gate network. As Torres departed with his security team, Zara found herself alone with Dr. Chen and 2 guards. The physicist had been remarkably calm throughout the battle, displaying the kind of composure that came from complete conviction in her cause. Dr. Chen, there's something I need to understand. Your brother and his family, they died on Kepler 442b during the bombardment. I was there. I watched those orbital strikes level entire cities. Sarah's composure cracked slightly. Then you know what your Empire is capable of. You've seen the price of resistance. I've also seen what happens when military commanders have no choice but to use maximum force. The rebellion on Kepler 442b could have been resolved through negotiation, but the planetary government chose to arm civilian populations and fight from population centers. Those civilians were defending their homes. Those civilians were used as human shields by leaders who knew they couldn't win a conventional war, Zara replied. Just like you're using this station's population now. There are 2 million people aboard Nexus Station, civilian contractors, families, support personnel. What happens to them if this battle goes wrong? For the first time since her capture, Sarah seemed genuinely uncertain. The Syndicate's plan had focused on the strategic and political implications of capturing the station, but the human cost had been treated as an acceptable variable. We're fighting for their freedom, she said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. No, you're fighting for your vision of their future. Did anyone ask those 2 million people if they wanted to be part of your revolution? Before Sarah could respond, the laboratory's emergency lighting activated as a massive explosion shook the station. Through the viewports, they could see debris from one of the quantum gates spiraling away into space. What happened? Zara demanded, activating her communicator. Ma'am, this is Torres. The enemy managed to plant charges on Gate 5 before we could stop them. The quantum matrix has been completely destroyed. The loss of one of the 6 primary gates would significantly disrupt traffic throughout the sector, but more importantly, it suggested that the Syndicate was prepared to destroy what they couldn't control. So much for their claims about preservation. Dr. Chen, Zara said coldly, I thought your people were here to capture the station, not destroy it. Sarah looked genuinely shocked. That wasn't part of the plan. Dark Star was designed to give us control, not, she stopped, realization dawning in her eyes. Someone's gone off script. Meaning? The operation has multiple components. If the capture objective fails, there are contingency protocols designed to deny the facility to Imperial forces. Sarah's face had gone pale. Commander, if those protocols are implemented, they'll destabilize the remaining quantum matrices. The resulting cascade failure will destroy the station and everything in the surrounding space. Zara felt ice in her veins. A cascade failure in a gate network of this size would release enough energy to sterilize the entire star system. The 2 million people aboard the station would die instantly, along with every ship in the area. How do we stop it? The contingency protocols can only be activated from the primary control center in Section 1. If your people can secure that area. Another explosion rocked the station, this one much closer. Through the laboratory's internal windows, they could see Syndicate boarding parties advancing through the corridor, their weapons cutting through Imperial security teams with ruthless efficiency. Torres, fall back to the laboratory section, Zara ordered. We need to establish a defensive perimeter around the primary control systems. As her security teams regrouped, Zara realized they were facing a race against time. Somewhere aboard the station, Syndicate operatives were moving to implement their final contingency, a plan that would transform a strategic victory into a Pyrrhic disaster that would eliminate 2 million innocent lives. Dr. Chen, she said, if you really care about those civilian populations you claim to be fighting for, you'll help us stop this. Sarah met her gaze, conflict clear in her eyes. If I help you, it means betraying everything I've worked for. If you don't help us, it means murdering 2 million people who never chose to be part of this war. The choice hung between them as the station shuddered under another assault, and time continued to run out for everyone aboard Nexus Station. Chapter 10, Convergence. Captain Elena Rodriguez had fought in 17 major engagements during her naval career, but the battle for Nexus Station was unlike anything she'd previously experienced. The combination of space combat and boarding actions, complicated by the ongoing sabotage operations, created a tactical environment of unprecedented complexity. Ma'am, the Valiant reports successful destruction of 2 enemy vessels, but they've taken critical damage to their main engines, reported Lieutenant Park. Captain Stevens is requesting permission to dock for emergency repairs. Elena studied the tactical display, noting the positions of the remaining Syndicate ships. 7 enemy vessels remained operational, but they'd succeeded in delivering boarding parties to the station and were now maintaining defensive positions around the facility. Permission granted. Mr. Park, coordinate with station traffic control for emergency docking procedures. The irony wasn't lost on her, they were using the same docking facilities that Syndicate forces had captured to insert their boarding parties. But the Valiant needed repairs, and Elena couldn't afford to lose another ship to preventable damage. Ma'am, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from Gate 5, warned her chief engineer. The quantum matrix appears to be destabilizing. Through the Phoenix's viewports, Elena could see the gate structure beginning to collapse in on itself, the stable wormhole it maintained flickering and contracting. When a quantum gate failed catastrophically, it released tremendous amounts of energy, enough to damage nearby structures. All ships, Maintain minimum safe distance from Gate 5. We have a potential cascade failure developing. As if summoned by her words, the gate exploded in a brilliant flash of blue-white light, sending debris in all directions. The station's shields absorbed most of the energy, but Elena could see that several sections had taken damage from the blast. Lieutenant Kim, get me Commander Voss immediately. The communication came through amid the static of heavy interference. Elena, this is Zara. We have a critical situation developing aboard the station. I saw the gate explosion. How bad is the damage? The explosion is the least of our problems. Dr. Chen has informed me that the Syndicate has contingency protocols designed to destabilize all remaining gates if they can't maintain control of the station. If they succeed, the resulting cascade failure will destroy the entire system. Elena felt her blood turn to ice. A cascade failure involving 5 quantum gates would release enough energy to obliterate everything within several million kilometers. Her ships, the station, and the 2 million people aboard it would be vaporized instantly. How do we stop it? We need to secure the primary control center in Section 1. But Zara, the Syndicate boarding parties are moving in that direction, and our security teams are being overwhelmed. Elena made a decision that went against every instinct of ship command. I'm bringing the Phoenix alongside the station. We'll provide direct fire support and additional boarding parties. Elena, that's incredibly dangerous. If the cascade failure occurs while you're docked, then we all die together instead of separately. I'm not abandoning 2 million civilians to save my ship. As the Phoenix maneuvered toward Nexus Station's docking facilities, Elena could see the ongoing battle through the massive transparisteel windows of the station's observation decks. Plasma bolts and laser fire created strobing patterns of light throughout the facility's interior spaces. All hands, prepare for boarding operations, she announced throughout the ship. We're going aboard the station to assist in its defense. Lieutenant Torres met Elena at the airlock as her Marines prepared to disembark. The young officer's uniform was torn and scorched, evidence of the fierce fighting that had been raging throughout the station. Ma'am, Commander Voss is coordinating the defense from Laboratory 7. The Syndicate has control of Sections 1 through 3, but we're holding them at the primary security checkpoint. What about the cascade failure protocols? Dr. Chen believes they're being implemented from the main control center. If we can't regain control within the next 30 minutes, the quantum matrices will begin destabilizing. Elena led her Marines through the station's corridors, following Torres toward the combat zone. The massive facility had been transformed into an urban battlefield, with barricades constructed from maintenance equipment and emergency bulkheads sealed to contain atmosphere breaches. They reached Laboratory 7 to find Commander Voss coordinating the defense alongside Dr. Chen, who was providing technical advice on the quantum gate systems. The sight of an Imperial officer working with a captured Syndicate operative illustrated just how desperate their situation had become. Elena, Zara said as she approached, Dr. Chen has agreed to help us prevent the cascade failure, but we need to reach the primary control center before the contingency protocols can be fully implemented. How many hostiles between here and there? At least 40 Syndicate operatives, plus whatever additional forces they've brought aboard since the fighting started. They're well armed and know the station's layout. Elena studied the tactical display showing the station's internal structure. Section 1 was on the opposite side of the massive facility, separated from their current position by nearly 2 kilometers of corridors, lift shafts, and security checkpoints. We'll never make it through direct assault, she said. But what if we don't go through their positions? What if we go around them? Torres looked up from his tactical display. Ma'am? The maintenance shafts and service passages. They run throughout the station, including routes that bypass the primary corridors entirely. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. It's possible. The environmental systems require access to every section of the station. But those passages aren't designed for combat operations, they're narrow, poorly lit, and have multiple choke points. Better than trying to fight through fortified positions, Elena replied. How long do we have? Sarah checked her chronometer. The contingency protocols have a built-in delay to allow for evacuation of Syndicate personnel. Based on when they would have been activated, we have maybe 20 minutes before the cascade failure becomes irreversible. Elena looked around the laboratory at the assembled Imperial personnel, Marines, security officers, engineers, and technicians who had volunteered to risk their lives to save 2 million people they'd never met. "All right, people. We're going to crawl through maintenance shafts to reach the most heavily defended position on the station, disable quantum cascade failure protocols that could vaporize the entire system, and do it all in less than 20 minutes. She paused, meeting each person's eyes. "Anyone who wants to stay behind and coordinate evacuation efforts, speak up now." No one moved. "Then let's go save a space station." Epilogue, New Horizons. 6 months after the Battle of Nexus Station, Commander Zara Voss stood once again at an observation deck, but this time she was aboard the diplomatic vessel Concordia, watching the blue-green surface of Haven 3 rotate slowly beneath them. The planet had been designated as neutral territory for the peace negotiations between the Terran hegemony and the reformed Zenith Coalition. The mission to save Nexus Station had succeeded, but at a cost. 47 Imperial personnel had died in the fighting, along with 31 Syndicate operatives and nearly 200 civilian contractors. The Quantum Gate network had been restored to partial function, but it would take months to fully repair the damage and remove all traces of the Syndicate's modifications. More significantly, the battle had demonstrated that the Empire's technological superiority was not absolute. Word of the Syndicate's success in capturing and controlling Imperial Gate networks had spread throughout the outer territories, inspiring similar resistance movements across multiple sectors. "The negotiations are proceeding better than expected," said Captain Rodriguez, joining Zara at the viewport. Elena had been promoted following her actions at Nexus Station, and now commanded the heavy cruiser Independence. "Any word from Dr. Chen?" Zara asked. "She's agreed to testify about Syndicate operations in exchange for amnesty. Her information has been invaluable in understanding how they recruited personnel and planned their operations." Saracen had become an unexpected ally in the aftermath of the battle. Her decision to help prevent the cascade failure had saved millions of lives, and her subsequent cooperation had provided crucial intelligence about Syndicate networks throughout the galaxy. What does she want in return? Resettlement on Haven 3. She wants to start over somewhere that doesn't have Imperial or Syndicate connections. Zara nodded, understanding the appeal of neutrality after years of conflict. She'd been considering her own future lately, wondering if she wanted to continue serving an empire that seemed to require constant warfare to maintain itself. "Elena, have you ever wondered if we're fighting for the right reasons?" Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, watching the planet turn below them. "Every day since Kepler 442b. But I've also seen what happens when there's no central authority to maintain order. The border worlds, the pirate raids, the corporate wars." She shrugged. "Maybe the Empire isn't perfect, but it's better than chaos." "Is it, though?" "Sometimes I think we just trade one kind of chaos for another." Through the viewport, they could see shuttles rising from Haven 3's surface, carrying negotiators from both sides to the waiting diplomatic vessel. Admiral Corvin would be aboard one of those shuttles, along with representatives from the Reformed Coalition and neutral mediators from the Outer Rim territories. "Ma'am," came a voice behind them. Lieutenant Torres approached with a message pad. "Priority transmission from Terra. New orders for the 7th Fleet." Zara read the orders with growing concern. The Empire was reorganizing its military structure, creating new rapid response fleets designed to prevent another Nexus Station situation. The implications were clear. Rather than addressing the underlying causes of rebellion, Imperial leadership was focusing on more efficient suppression. "Elena, I've been offered a position at the Naval Academy on Titan, teaching strategic analysis to the next generation of officers. That's a significant honor. Are you going to accept?" "I'm considering it. Someone needs to teach young officers that there are alternatives to total warfare. That sometimes the best victory is the one you don't have to fight for." As they watched, one of the shuttles docked with the Concordia, and Zara could see familiar figures through the airlock windows. Admiral Corvin, looking older than his years, accompanied by coalition representatives who had once been branded as terrorists and traitors. "Think the negotiations will succeed?" Elena asked. "I hope so. Because if they don't, the next conflict will make Nexus Station look like a minor skirmish." The shuttle bay opened, and the negotiating teams began to board the ship. Zara could see Dr. Chen among the coalition representatives, the physicist who had nearly destroyed a space station now working to prevent future conflicts. "Ma'am," Torres said quietly, "the Admiral is requesting your presence in Conference Room 1. Zara took a last look at Haven 3, the neutral world that represented hope for a different kind of future. Then she followed Torres toward what might be her final briefing as a serving Imperial officer. Behind them, the stars of the Andromache galaxy continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the struggles of the civilizations that had grown up in their light. But for the first time in years, some of those struggles were moving toward resolution rather than escalation. It was, Zara thought, a beginning worth fighting for.